15th August 1947. A midnight that dispels darkness and dawns into a new era. An era of hopes and aspirations, of dreams and idealism. An era that marks the rebirth of a great nation. The country embarks on a new journey led by Jawaharlal Nehru, the first Prime Minister of independent India.
Long years ago, we made a tryst with destiny, and now the time comes when we shall redeem our pledge, not wholly or in full measure, but very substantially. At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom.
The challenge was immense, and fulfilling the pledge was not easy. Centuries of imperial rule had trampled India, and independence came at a huge cost. The nation bled with the injuries inflicted by the partition. And the divisions of religion, castes, language and gender were rooted deep in the social fabric. The economy was in tatters. There were few industries and not enough food to feed the millions. It was in such testing times that Jawaharlal Nehru set to realize his dream of a strong and resurgent India. He steered the nation on the path of recovery and modernization. A nation that could secure to its citizens dignity and rights and can hold its head in the comity of nations. Prime Minister Nehru didn't have enough resources or experience to administer the country. All that he had was a vision for India, a moral authority earned out of dedicated years in the service of nation, and a responsibility to translate the values of Congress into a constitution for India. A constitution whose blueprint was first proposed by him in 1929. It was the year when Jawahar, at the age of 39, was chosen the president of the Lahore session, that he proposed the resolution of Purna Swaraj. India now demanded complete independence. It was a paradigm shift from the earlier demands for participation in power or dominion status. Nehru further placed before the countrymen what this independence would mean to them. For the first time, he proposed fundamental rights for all, social and economic equality, irrespective of caste, creed, religion, gender, birth or education. He spoke for abolition of untouchability and right against exploitations. He argued for religious tolerance and secularism and stood for protection of minority rights, including their cultural and educational rights. He said that the citizens of independent India would have freedom of expression of thought, right to form association, and the state would ensure social and economic justice for labor and peasantry and give voting rights to all its adult citizens. This idea of India, as proposed by Jawaharlal Nehru, made him the darling of masses, and he was the national hero of the youth of India. Nehru understood the responsibility that came with such adulation.
Freedom and power bring responsibility. That responsibility rests upon this assembly, a sovereign body representing the sovereign people of India. Before the birth of freedom, we have endured all the pains of labor, and our hearts are heavy with the memory of this sorrow. Some of those pains continue even now. Nevertheless, the past is over, and it is the future that beckons to us now.
Nehru spent nearly 9 years in jail, fighting for independence of India. The solitary confinements and the torturous jail life failed to deter him from his path. In jail, future was uncertain, and independence was a distant dream. But Nehru would not lose hope and continued with twin task of leading the independence struggle and further refining the idea of India. Jawaharlal's intellectual capabilities and prowess and his commitment to the cause were increasingly being acknowledged and respected by all. When Subhash Chandra Bose took over as the President of Congress in 1938 and constituted the National Planning Commission, he made Nehru its chairman, recognizing and honoring his intellect. As chairman, Nehru formed 29 subcommittees and submitted reports on subjects as diverse as labor, power and fuel, education, manufacturing and industry, banking and currency, housing, land policy, agricultural labor and insurance, crops, industrial finance and technical education and development research. These reports formed the blueprint for governance in independent India. Independence, which was yet in the unknown realms of future. Nehru was driven just by hope and by conviction, realizing fully well that imperial rule may outlive his own life. He was born in a very affluent family. His father, Motilal Nehru, was a renowned barrister. Jawaharlal himself had graduated with honours in natural science from Trinity College, Cambridge, and had studied law in London, but he chose to sacrifice his affluence, his career as barrister, and embrace dusty lanes of villages and dark chambers of jail in his quest for freedom.
I was filled with shame and sorrow. Shame at my own easygoing and comfortable life. Sorrow at the degradation and overwhelming poverty of India. Their faith in us, casual visitors from the distant city, embarrassed me and filled me with a new responsibility that frightened me.
Independence was followed by a Swadeshi government. Congress took charge of the government, but the world was skeptical. A country ridden with divisions and inexperienced didn't evoke much confidence. Britain's former Prime Minister Winston Churchill said,
"In handing over the government of India to these so-called political classes, we are handing over to men of straw, of whom, in a few years, no trace will remain."
American scholar-journalist Selig S. Harrison was of the view that
the issue is, in fact, whether any Indian state can survive at all.
Neville Maxwell expressed that
the great experiment of developing India within a democratic framework has failed.
The world was in doubt, but Jawaharlal Nehru was confident. Congress had done its preparations during the freedom movement itself. The Prime Minister was aware that the complex society and nation like India can only be governed through inclusive approach. He believed in freedom and diversity of views. Therefore, he took the unusual step of inviting non-Congress leaders to his cabinet. There were 5 non-Congress members in his 12-member cabinet, and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, Shyama Prasad Mukherjee, John Mathai, C.H. Bhabha, and Shanmughan Chetty were made ministers. Nehru also ensured that his cabinet was representative of India and included ministers from amongst women, Hindus, Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, Parsis, Sindhis, and Dalits. He established fragile freedom on a strong edifice of representative, secular, and consensual politics.
पहला फर्ज किसी मुल्क के लिए, किसी कौम के लिए क्या होता है? पहला फर्ज है अपनी आज़ादी को मजबूत करना और कायम रखना। हर बात को इसी गज से नापना होता है। ये चीज़ हमारे मुल्क की आज़ादी को कायम रखती है, हमारे मुल्क की एकता को कायम रखती है, हमारे मुल्क की तरक्की करती है कि नहीं। अगर हम में से कोई इस बात को भूल जाएं और बातों को सामने रखें, अगर हम में से कोई अपने सूबे को सामने रखें, अपने प्रांत और प्रदेश को, मुल्क को भूलकर अगर हम कहीं इस संप्रदा में या दूसरी संप्रदा में जाएं, अगर हम अपनी जात को, कास्ट को आगे रखें मुल्क के, अगर हम अपनी भाषा को आगे रखें मुल्क के, तो हम तबाह हो जाएंगे और मुल्क तबाह होगा।
Jawaharlal was a true believer of planned and phased development. He understood well that there is no magic wand for growth, and a complex and big nation needs a robust institutional base for a bright future. He felt that independence is meaningless without economic and political freedom, which itself is not possible without democratic fabric and scientific temper. He understood the challenge. As he said in an interview to Andre Malraux, the biggest challenge is to carve out a modern nation in a nation which has deep-rooted religious sentiments. Jawaharlal Nehru set out in the task of rebuilding a great nation by launching ambitious 5-year plans and built large dams, steel plants, and irrigation projects. Simultaneously, he established the institutional network for nurturing and developing skilled human resource base required for nation building. He once remarked, "While it is relatively easy to put up a factory or a plant or a project, it is much more difficult and it takes much more time to train the human being that will run a factory or plant." Nehru's visionary leadership and administrative capabilities resulted in a string of new institutions of national importance, institutions that eventually turned out to be the backbone of capacity building in New India. He dreamt of and established Indian Institute of Technology, Indian Institute of Management, National Institute of Design, Indian Statistical Institute, Academy of Administration, and National Police Academy, and many more. He also set up Lalit Kala Academy, Sangeet Natak Academy, Sahitya Academy, and emphasized the role of art and culture in national development. Jawaharlal Nehru was known as Shanti Doot, the messenger of peace, and was a great votary of global peace.
Our own country is full of its own problems, more particularly to give a better life to all our innumerable people. And that can only be done if there is peace. And so for us, peace is a passion. Not only a passion, but something that all our logic and mind drives us to as essential for our growth.
But he was also a pragmatic statesman. He understood that the preparation for national security and yearning for peace are not conflicting sentiments. He had witnessed the devastation inflicted by the Second World War and understood well the power and potential of atomic bomb. That's why, in an address in Bombay in 1946, he had said, "As long as the world is constituted as it is, every country will have to devise and use the latest scientific devices for its protection. I have no doubt India will develop her scientific researches, and I hope Indian scientists will use the atomic force for constructive purposes. But if India is threatened, she will inevitably try to defend herself by all means at her disposal. I hope India, in common with other countries, will prevent the use of atomic bombs." In the same year, he invited Homi Bhabha to work for the nuclear program for independent India. Immediately after the catastrophe of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, when the world opinion was strongly against atomic bomb, it was a daring decision by Nehru, given the fact that India was on the verge of gaining independence and had no significant military or economic power.
बहनों और भाइयों, तो अगर हम अपने मुल्क को, खासकर आजकल जो हम आज़ाद हो गए हैं, मजबूत उसे करना है, तो ये बुनियाद हमें देनी है उसको कि जिन जिन फनों में, विज्ञान में और बातों में जिससे और देश आगे हमारे बढ़ गए हैं, उनको हम यहाँ सीखें। और सीखें कैसे? ज़्यादा दूर तक जाके बुनियादी तौर से कि बड़े सिखाने वालों में दुनिया के हमारे यहाँ भी पैदा हों। तब अगर हम उस दरख्त को यहाँ उसके बीज लगाएं तो उस दरख्त के फल फूल बहुत निकलें, जिससे हमारे मुल्क की ताकत बढ़े और मुल्क की जनता को फायदा हो।
As it turned out, it was one of the most far-sighted and sagacious decisions by him. And India today is a full-fledged nuclear power, secure and strong, with agencies like Bhabha Atomic Research Centre, Indian Atomic Energy Commission, Defence Research Development Organisation and Indian Space Research Organisation. Jawaharlal Nehru also realized that energy security is an integral part of national security setup. He stood against the entire international pressure and went ahead with the establishment of ONGC and other institutions, which formed the backbone of India's energy security systems. Nehru's personality and charm were not just confined to the borders of India. He was an international hero who succeeded in setting the agenda of world politics. Despite the fact that Republic of India was new and a poor nation with little capabilities in economic, military or political spheres, he left an indelible mark on the world politics only on the basis of his intellect and power of idea and morality. He positioned India prominently on the world map. His ability to see the world in his own inimitable and novel way helped him craft non-alignment movement, in which his comrades were Egypt's Nasser, Indonesia's Sukarno, Yugoslavia's Tito and others. Jawaharlal Nehru played a critical role in ending the imperial regimes in Africa. His clear moral stance against apartheid and imperialism made him a hero amongst the African people. His personality and progressive ideas had a magnetic appeal. Leaders and public both would not escape his charm, and they flocked to just have his glimpse. He was accorded special gestures and protocol privilege throughout the world. On his visit to the US, President John F. Kennedy said,
"Your reputation, the things for which you have stood, things with which you have been identified in your long career, all these have spread your fame and reputation far beyond the borders of your own country and have been identified with the great aspirations of people all around the world."
President Tito of Yugoslavia had remarked,
India can be proud of having such an outstanding leader as Nehru, who through his efforts and farsightedness is paving the way towards a better future for India, and who, through his untiring activity in the struggle for peace, devotion to the policy of coexistence, and the strengthening of peaceful international cooperation, has become one of the most outstanding statesmen of the world.
Eleanor Roosevelt said,
His success is already being proved, I think, and not only the Indians, but much of the rest of the world owes Nehru a debt of gratitude for his leadership, for his integrity and his courage.
Nehru was an international legend who endeared himself to the leaders across the world through his ideas and progressive outlook. He was looked upon as a leader who not just stabilized India after independence, but also developed its democratic and secular fabric.
First of all, I've lived my life, a very large part of it. Secondly, it is occasionally frustrating and all that, but generally it's a satisfying life. That is, the satisfaction really comes when one can fit in one's thought with one's action. I was never quite so satisfied in that sense as in the days of our struggle for independence. And especially the early days, I was younger too, and I forgot everything almost, including my family, everything. I saw them, I took them for granted, I forgot them. I was in a state of, shall I say, a queer state of mind, concentrating on one thing, and it's like an arrow from the bow, it goes straight.
Evaluating his role, Sardar Patel had written, "It was, therefore, in the fitness of things that in the twilight preceding the dawn of independence, he should have been our leading light, and that when India was faced with crises after crises following the achievement of our freedom, he should have been the upholder of our faith and the leader of our legions. No one knows better than myself how much he has labored for his country in the last 2 years of our difficult existence." Jawaharlal Nehru was a karma yogi. He dreamt and he worked for strong, self-reliant India till his last breath. A life that began like a prince ended as the Emperor of Hearts. He sacrificed his comfort for the love of his nation and passed into eternity, comforted by the love of work done. India wept. Its leading light had gone. A leader who lived only to shape the collective destiny of its citizens passed away. And the world moaned along. The champion of liberty, democracy, and liberalism would be missed forever. But his ideals would live on. His thoughts would prevail, further shaping the idea of India and the idea of an equitable world.